Good morning, Rollins, and good morning to you once again, farmers. It's a pleasure to meet you and make a presentation on this agribusiness talk related to tomato production. So what I highlighted earlier that what's important for us farmers is that we have an IPM approach. In this case, we mean an integrated pest management approach to managing our tomato crop. By this, I mean that we have to consider biological, chemical, cultural, and physical methods of control for whichever pests that we may encounter in our fields so that we get the best out of our crops. So basically, each time you want to deal with your nematodes and each time you want to deal with your whether diseases, insects, you have to bear in mind the IPM approach that I'll be highlighting as we go about our presentation. But maybe it's important that I highlight the factors that are important for farmers to consider whenever you want to get an agrochemical. I highlighted that agrochemicals by nature, they are poisons. So as such, they have got to be handled with caution and in a manner that does not harm us, the bearer or the environment or passerbys. So whenever you consider buying an agrochemical, first of all, you need to check on the seller's reputation. Get information from other farmers. How reputable is this manufacturer? How reputable is the supplier or retail outlet that has got those particular agrochemicals? Then the second aspect is to do with your understanding of the problem that is at hand, the challenges that you'll be facing at your farm. You can't use a fungicide to kill an insect. There is no magic to it in which you can use an inappropriate product to control the wrong target pest. You've got to understand what you want to control, so that when you get to the shop, you get to have the correct product. But the other thing is also to do with proximity of the shop to your farm or your field. Sometimes farmers tend to buy from unreputable suppliers because of distance, and they want a quick fix solution to a problem. It's important to bear in mind whenever each time you get to buy your chemicals, have talk to an agronomist, have the correct portfolio of your products that you want beforehand, so that whenever you go to the shop to which you want to buy your product, you then have the complete basket that will help you manage your crop from the start of the season up to the end. Then the fourth aspect is to do with the product knowledge. This is quite key, very important. And I know most of our farmers now now have a behavior, a tendency where they read and understand the label, which is what you always encourage the farmers to do. You want to have knowledge in terms of the efficacy of the product. What exactly does it cover? Does it cover aphids alone? Does it cover the lepidopterans as well? Does it cover whichever kind of diseases that you might have? You need to understand the efficacy levels of the product, how it's applied, etc. And also the pre-harvest interval, which is the number of days which you must adhere to before you harvest your crop. This is quite key because it ensures a healthy nation, it ensures a healthy population, your pre-harvest interval. Then you also have your follow-up periods after applying one product. How many weeks, days, or months should elapse before you come in with another product or before you put in another crop? That's what we mean by follow-up periods. It applies to nematicides, and it also applies to most herbicides. And you also want to understand your mode of action whenever you apply your product. Is it a quick-acting product? Does it knock down your plants, the target site? Does it affect the nervous system? Contact insecticide, fungicide, translaminar, all those factors, they have got to be understood, as well as the toxicity levels. By this I mean you look at the triangle of the product. You want to understand whether it's a green label product, amber, red, or purple label product, because you realize that in most markets they are becoming now sensitive and they want safer solutions. They want green label and probably at worst the amber label products. But once you have these, you can then make a decision whether to apply a product, how you can go about handling it, the appropriate kind of PPE that you would want. This is determined by the toxicity levels of the product, but I would want to encourage you farmers to use appropriate caution, put on appropriate personal protective equipment so that you do not get to injure yourself or contaminate the environment because of handling pesticides. Then probably the last point that's important for most farmers to do with the pricing. You realize that in the market you've got different products. You've got your products that are, let's say, the patented products from the principal companies such as your Syngenta, BASF, Bayer, Monsanto, etc. Those chemicals, by nature, they are expensive because of the research work that has been put in. When compared to, say, generics, generics are equally good because they do supply the same active ingredients supplied by those original products. However, it is important that farmers, you understand that there are counterfeit products in the market, fake products that are all over, and it's affecting quite a number of farmers. You realize that once you apply a product and you do not have a source a reference where you can say, I bought this product from such a company, then it can be a problem for you to be able to recover your cost, because most of these counterfeit products do not work. They burn out your crop, which brings us back to the first point where we said you need to buy from a source that is very reputable, where you can claim, where you can have people that can come and assist you in terms of how you can go about improving your crop as well as recovering it. So because of our time, I'll try to speed up and move on to the next slide, which is on weed management. It's always important for a farmer to keep a weed-free field, because by this you minimize competition for your crop, so that it has the best possible conducive environment for it to be able to exploit all the nutrients, sunlight, air, for it to grow optimal and give you the best yield. However, you need to understand the kinds of weeds that are in your the types of weeds that are in your field, so that you then come in with the appropriate control. In tomato production, there is a bit of a limited range in terms of the herbicides that you can use. You realize that most of the times farmers will use the hand hose in terms of tilling, in terms of weed management, or hand pulling sometimes, but usually they use hose in terms of managing their weeds. You can consider using glyphosate as a pre-plant cleanup herbicide, in which you should allow at least 7 to 10 days to lapse before you can transplant your tomatoes. And then you can consider applying again your Duo Magnum or Metallaclo. It has got different formulations, in even the S-Metallaclo, in which you can, which should be applied within 7 days of transplanting your tomatoes. That's how you can secure your crop. You can also use your metribuzin as a pre-emergence herbicide in terms of control of your broadleaf weeds and your annual grasses. Then, when you have the annual and perennial grasses having emerged in your field, you can use your fluazip or P-butyl. Fluazip targets only your annual and perennial grasses. By nature, the tomato crop is a broadleaf weed. It's a broadleaf crop. Therefore, there's a bit of a limited range in terms of the herbicides that can be used, which is why at first I highlighted that there is hand weeding that is mostly done in potatoes, in tomatoes. Now, looking at the insect management, we always encourage farmers to do regular scouting. This has got to be your routine that you follow, that you follow religiously. You've got to check the underside of your leaves. You need to check the stems. You need to check on the fruits, and if possible, in some instances, check the roots. You can have some points where you can open up the crop and check on the roots, how they are growing, how deep they are growing into the soil, so that you can have an understanding of how your pest management program is working. But once you've positively identified the particular insect pest, you can't just come in with control measures. You need to have an understanding whether it is causing economic injury to your crop or not. Once you have realized that the number of insects, be it aphids, your Tuta Absoluta, your whitefly moths in the field has reached in a number where you can then think that it can cause economic injury, this is when you come in with your control measures. But remember, we talked about the integrated pest management approach that you can come in with. You can put your pheromone traps. These are a monitoring tool. They attract. I'm sure Francis has highlighted how these pheromone traps work. They attract the male moths and have them stuck onto the sticky paper, where you then have where then you then have the female laid by the eggs laid by the females unfertilized. So that then reduces your population. Some can even resort to physically crushing some lepidopteran pests, your worms, so that you get to minimize. That is under circumstances where you've got a small piece of land, say in a greenhouse, or a small piece of land in an open field. You can also come in with insect sprays, for which we'll discuss some of the products that you can use. And in some cases, which is a bit rare in our country, most people, some other people use natural predators that can then eat, say, introducing ladybird beetles to eat on your aphids, etc., so that you minimize or down the population of the particular insect that will be causing injury to your crop. Now, looking at the most common insects that we have, or farmers that they experience in this country, you've got your cutworms. In that, you can use your lambda cyhalothrin, your fenvarelet, chlorpyrifos, which also works well against the white grub, as well as the false wireworms. For the aphids, you can consider using Actara as a drench once your crop is established well. You can foliar spray your thunder and your dimethoate. Then for the Tuta Absoluta, bowworms and leaf miners, basically this is a category that we call the lepidopteran pest. At ZFC, we've got a product that is doing quite well in terms of control of these lepidopteran insect pests. The Tuta pack is comprised of cyromazine, indoxacarb, and spike extra. These have got to be applied in rotation so that you minimize the chances of getting resistance from your Tuta Absoluta. So Tuta pack is available. It's being sold quite affordable. It's just under $29 for all those three products that can cover up to a hectare. And I promise you, this one is working wonders. Then for the red spider mite, we've got your ivermectin, dimethoate, malathion 25 fertile powder, and you can even consider your amitrazine diacophol as well to control your red spider mites. Then for the thrips, you've got your lambda, which is basically a combination of your chlorantraniliprole and lambda cyhalothrin. You've got your thunder and malathion 25 fertile powder. And for the white flies, we have got the spike extra. It's a combination of ivermectin benzoate and acetamiprid. Your Actara is thiamethoxam and imidacloprid, which has got three different kinds of formulations. The ones that work in your tomato crop are the 200 SL and 350 SC. Now, moving on to the disease management. It's very important that farmers get to understand the factors that cause diseases to establish. There is what we call the disease triangle. Basically, it's to do with a susceptible host. I'm sure you have been highlighted. It has been highlighted that there are certain varieties that are resistant or tolerant to certain varieties and can still do well. There's the genetic improvement that has been done by these seed companies. So if you have a susceptible host and a virulent pathogen within the air or brought about by the water or within the soil, you have your disease established. And a conducive environment, that's the third factor. So for the disease triangle, in a nutshell, I said you need to have a susceptible host, a virulent pathogen, and a conducive environment. Right now, we've got ample rains that are falling in pretty much the rest of the country, especially the northern part. So it then increases the relative humidity in any cropping environment. And once the temperatures increase, it then becomes easier for the diseases to establish on your leaf surfaces, on the fruits, depending on the kind of disease, whether it's a canker, it's lead blight, it's early blight, it's fusarium, etc. Those things, they can affect your crop seriously. So what do you need to do as a farmer? You need to take proactive action. And by this, I'm saying you need to consider using products such as your Apron Star, which is a combination product of three active ingredients, two fungicides and one insecticide, to make sure that your seedbed is free of diseases during its early season. So you then need to come in with that Apron Star. It's a seed dresser. You just as you at the time of sowing, that's when you apply it. But then you have to consider other products such as your Bion 50 wettable granules, which is a plant activator. Basically, it boosts the immune system of your crop so that it is able to fight off diseases. Then you realize that as you apply the plant activator in combination with some preventive fungicides, which are on the next slide, you then realize that you have less chances of your crop being affected by diseases. But we have quite a number of diseases for tomatoes, but the most common ones is most farmers know are the late blight and early blight. I know the several farmers have been experiencing this. However, there is also the fusarium wilt, bacterial wilt, bacterial canker, the leaf spots, etc. There are different strains of these, and however, for the pathogen, for the fungal pathogens, we need to take proactive action, like I highlighted before. You need to come in and spray your rivers, which is your mandipropamid, your mancozeb, difenoconazole, copper oxychloride. If you rotate these fungicides, you realize that you minimize the chances of a fungal spore or a particular strain of a pathogen to establish on the leaf surfaces, which means that you tend to have better control of the different strains of fungal pathogens that can affect your tomato crop. But in the event that the fungus is established, you can then come in with your curative fungicides, which is basically on the next slide, your deleter, your metalman, and your tebuconazole. Your deleter works well for the for early blight, and for early and late blight. Your metalman works well for your late blight and downy mildew, and then your tebuconazole works well against your powdery mildew. So these are some of the curative fungicides that you can consider applying. But there is also another problematic pest in your crop, which is the nematodes. Basically, from that picture, you can see the extent of nematode damage that can be done, that can be caused. And by this way, in tomatoes, there is specifically the root node nematodes. They are a problem, and you can, once you have got those galls on your roots, the crop can't have the maximum absorption of nutrients and the maximum absorption of water, because the galls then become too fibrous and you don't have your fine root hairs to be able to extract those nutrients. That then reduces the ultimate yield that you can get from your crop. However, the control options that you have, they include your crop rotation. That means rotating the field with non-susceptible crops. You can also consider fumigation with your products such as Basamid. You can also do your solarization, basically laying out a plastic on the land so that you increase your temperature and try and have the nematodes killed. And you can also use your nematicides. Especially currently we're carrying Oxamil, which you can apply in most of these solanaceous crops to control nematodes, and you have fine root hairs. So onto the soil health. Different tomato varieties, they can be grown in different kinds of soils. You can grow your tomatoes in clays, looms, or even in sands. But what's important is for the farmer to understand that the ideal pH range for your tomatoes is from 6 and 6.5. Yes, slightly below that, it can work very well. But it's important for the farmer to understand this, which is why we always encourage the farmer to have their soils analyzed, because you can put in the best of everything, and yet when your pH is not at its optimum, you will not get the best out of the crop. And what other farmers need to understand and appreciate is that whenever you put in your manure, which you highly recommend, you have got to use well decomposed manure, which then helps to activate the microbial organisms and even earthworms as they burrow into the soil, etc., helping with root penetration, improvement in terms of the drainage and the texture or even the water holding capacity of your soil, particularly those farmers with sands, which is why we recommend your manure. It has to be well decomposed, no other option. It can be incorporated using your trenches or in planting stations. But what's important is to have a friable soil that is loose and deep enough as tomatoes are deep rooted. They can, in some varieties, especially the indeterminate, they can go well over a meter in terms of root penetration into the soil. So it means the mining of nutrients will be excellent, and you get a good response in terms of the vegetative development and fruit production as the crop grows. But now let me also hasten to say it's important that you have a weed-free kind of soil or even growing media where you can put in your fumigants before you transplant your crop, particularly when you have a history that this soil has been affected by nematodes, it has been affected by your fusarium wilt or even some bacterial wilt. Both these are the remedies that you can then use for those kinds of diseases. Now, going on to the soil and plant nutrition, it's always important that a farmer supplies the adequate amount of nutrients throughout the growth stages of your crop. You realize that there is more demand of phosphorus when your crop is transplanted, when it is young, and there is also a high demand of your nitrogen when your crop is in its vegetative stages, and a high demand of your potash when your crop is in the flowering and reproductive phase. So you realize once you've met this, it then contributes to a good quality crop and as well as having the desired yield. Now, on to the next slide, you realize that making the nutrient uptake of your variety as close as possible to the fertilization program that probably you'd have been recommended by the agronomist is quite important. You can consider doing your weekly fertigation programs, which we can design for you at ZFC. You have situations where, like I highlighted earlier, that during this high temperature period during this summer, you tend to have water uptake that is a bit more rapid than the nutrient uptake. So that it then sort of creates an imbalance in terms of within the root zone where you have some saline conditions being created and as well as slow uptake of your nutrients because of the high temperatures, which is why we then consider that you do either your foliar sprays of nutrients, or you can also do your fertigation so that you have a small amount of nutrients being applied to your crop regularly, yet being taken up in solution along with the irrigation water. Now, basically, each crop has got its nutritional demands. As you can see on the on the next slide, we've got your nitrogen demands for your tomatoes ranging from 450 to 450 to 480 kgs of nitrogen that is being required depending on the variety, and phosphate, it has got its own range, 250 to 310, and your potash from 700 to 850 kgs per hectare. These are the major elements that are required for growth, for your primary elements that are required for crop growth, which we can then try and work out once we have done our soil analysis. And on the next slide, you can see that there are different products that we can use as basals from ZFC. There is the legendary ZFC vegetable blend. Composition, it is 9-24-20. But the most interesting part is that this one contains zinc in addition to your boron and your sulfur. It's important that farmers understand that most of our fertilizers as ZFC, they contain boron and zinc, because these are required in any growth stage of your crop. Then you also have your tobacco blend 62823, tobacco fat 62420, another tobacco fat product 51512, as well as your seedbed fertilizer. Some know it as a compound S, which is your 7218, and your gypsum, which is your cheapest source of calcium. I think right now a 50 kg bag is going for $11 for gypsum. So it has to be incorporated together with either of those 5 basal fertilizer products that you can use. But now, in terms of the application rates, these are determined by the soil analysis results. They are determined by the varieties, which are the top varieties which are growing, and the desired yield which you intend to come up with. So you've got your top dressing fertilizers as well. You have your potato super top, 23% of your nitrogen and 24% potash. You have your potassium nitrate again, 13% nitrogen, 46% potash. Your SOP, this one particularly contains, it's called sulfate of potash or potassium chloride, which contains about 50% K2O and 18% of your sulfur. Those other products, your MKP, MAP, and calcium nitrate, they are good. But let me highlight this thing to you farmers that tomatoes, they are more sensitive to nitrogen in the ammonium form than they are in the nitrate form, which is why you realize that we encourage, yes, you can use your ammonium nitrate, but we usually recommend that you use more of your calcium nitrate so that you avoid what we call ammonium injury. So it's an important factor for farmers to understand the nutritional program. And even from the sources of those products, we have minimized to use products that are chloride containing, because it's then tomatoes are not tolerant, or they do not favor chloride with soils with chlorine, which is why you need to engage in agronomist for the choice of fertilizers for the best performance of your crop. Now we've got these specialty fertilizers. You've got your quick start, quick grow, best bloom. We call it the quick best range. On top of your nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, we have got additional elements such as your sulfur, copper, iron, boron, zinc, magnesium, and molybdenum in different proportions. So these are applied, your quick start, you apply it beginning, as you can see, it has got high phosphorus, like I indicated before. You spray, drench, or fertigate it, beginning at week 3 to say about from week 1 to week 3 after transplanting. Your quick grow from week 4, say to about week 6, which is the time for which we then anticipate flowering. And then your best from a flowering time going onwards into the reproductive phase. But now there is also your magnesium nitrate and your magnesium sulfate, which contain your nitrogen, magnesium, and your sulfur, which particularly supply those elements, especially when a deficiency is expressed, or when there is a fertigation product program that has got to be adhered to. But when now there's something that I have to highlight about your calcium, magnesium, and your potassium. They compete for the same site of absorption. Therefore, you realize that if you cause an imbalance when you supply those things, those elements, say by increasing one element in the other, you then tend to have an absorption of more of one element than the other. So some other farmers may be surprised to say, I've been applying this product, but magnesium is not showing up. Probably you've got too much of your calcium or too much of your potassium, which then impedes your magnesium to be taken up, because like I said, they share the same site of absorption. So the balance of those nutrients is quite key. Moving on, for these specialty fertilizers, you can consider drenching them. By this we mean you can just simply dissolve them and apply them using whichever equipment that we have at home or at your field. Then for the foliar sprays, you can use your mist blower, you can use your knapsack sprayer to apply onto the leaves, and sometimes you apply them onto the fruits, particularly with products such as your calcium nitrate, so that you eliminate deficiencies such as your blossom end rot. You can also apply these specialty fertilizers through the fertigation system, in which you mix with your irrigation water and they can then be released through your orifice of your drip irrigation, or the droplets of or from your sprinkler irrigation, or even the center pivot. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of my presentation. Those are my contact details.